Good morning, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton, and this is Charter Moms Chats. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and I wanted to come to you about. This morning I got up early and was doing some drafting, so I wanted to talk about the blog post that I'm working on. It's probably going to publish next Tuesday, and well, it's been, let's see, the last week or two we've been talking about things that we can do as things start to reopen, or things that have stayed open, like the greenway trails, or now you can go to state parks, you can go to the botanical garden, you can go to the missions, things like that. And we've had some guests, right? We had Magic Theater, we've had folks from the Briscoe Western Art Museum, but I thought, well, I think it's time to kind of come back to what's on a lot of people's minds, which is what will back to school look like, and how do we um, kind of mentally make the best of the summer while living with so much uncertainty. So that's what's on my mind. It's been a topic in the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group on Facebook lately, and so I wanted to share kind of how my family is thinking it through, and give you kind of a preview of the blog post that we're going to share next week. So basically, like you may have seen, there's a meme going around that claims to say, like, this is what back to school will be like. This is one of those times where you have to put your skeptic goggles on, and if just because something claims to be from a government agency or claims to summarize the guidance from a government agency, it's not necessarily true. So just if something seems extreme, maybe it's not reality. So my advice and what I got in the blog post are links, so you can go look at what does the Centers of Disease Control recommend. What is go to their page about schools and read their guidance, and it keeps changing too. So right, because scientists are still learning more about COVID-19 and how it affects people, how it affects children. I've also got a link to the Texas Education Agency page about coronavirus resources. So, and then anything that affects your family, it's going to have to come through, a local entity, whether that's, if it's a charter school, then their nonprofit appointed board. If it's at a traditional public school, it's going to be through the elected school board. And this is where we, ding, advocacy moment here. If you are concerned about what your particular school is going to do about safety guidelines for coronavirus, then getting to figure out who your school board member is, that would be a good thing to do. And actually, we have a resource guide that just says, okay, this is, if you're in this district, this is how you get a hold of your school board. Now, the last time I updated that post was back in January, and so that was before coronavirus. And back then, they were still having in-person school board meetings. These days, a lot of school board meetings are happening virtually, and they may or may not be having public comment. So things are still a little different that way. But there's still, you can still write letters, send email, make phone calls. You can communicate. And one thing I'm going to do as part of this blog post is do a survey to find out what y'all's concerns are, and there'll be a place to leave your email address. And if you leave your email address, then we can help coach you about how to advocate to your school board or to your charter school about because now is the time when they are looking at contingency plans about what the fall will be like, and now's your chance to maybe influence that process by explaining your point of view. So okay, I'm really afraid about this, so I get a little off track, but I have my draft here that I'm I'm still refining it, but it's mostly written. Okay, so basically, yeah, there's just a lot we don't know. Okay, so be skeptical of memes. If in doubt, go to the real source. Go to the Centers for Disease Control. Go to Texas Education Agency. Go to your local school district or your principal or your school board member and get it straight. Not just something on the internet that has misspelled words and it's misrepresenting what the guidelines actually are. And look, the CDC does not determine what happens in your child's school, right? They can issue guidelines, and they have smart scientists there, but what happens at your school, that's determined by it involves teachers, it involves principals, it involves the school board, it involves the lead office team. A lot of these decisions are made locally, and really our mayor and our county judge, they do briefings every day at around 6:30, and it's maybe 6 to 6:30. and you can tune in and you can find out, what's happening locally. They're very transparent about, how many cases there are, how many fatalities there are, where the diagnoses are happening, if it's in prisons, nursing homes. They're sharing all that information. And this fall we might be hearing about transmission happening in schools. That's the risk that we're facing. Um, but just inform yourself and be skeptical, right? I mean, here I am on the internet, so but I'm not saying trust me. I'm saying I'm going to facilitate you finding the reliable sources. I want you to be inform yourself and use your own independent judgment, and make the decision that's right for your family. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just trying to help you find the reliable sources. And that's I hope you trust me to do that, to put you in the right direction, right? I'm not going to answer what's right for your family, but I do want you to be well informed and be safe. Um, so it's from the school leaders that I've talked to, the best they can do right now is just make contingency plans for different possible scenarios for the fall, because it's just too far in advance to know for sure what back to school will be like. But we're starting to see things, public statements from superintendents or from the state leaders about what school will be like. So the different possibilities. So it seems it's like the governor has said that summer school can start on June 1. Although locally, I'm not aware of any schools starting any sooner than July for summer school. And key thing, summer school is voluntary. But they're looking at like how do we help the students who need the most work to catch up? How do we bring them back on campus? Is there any way to give special help to the students in special education? That's something that Superintendent Pedro Martinez at SASD has really mentioned. He's really emphasized that like some of the services that special needs students depend on are really hard to offer remotely. So that's a really important constituency. I have a son with special needs, although in some ways he's one of the few who actually may be better off doing remote education. But that's a topic for another day. Um, so so what will school be like if it reopens? Be skeptical about what you see on the internet. It's really too early for anyone to say like, oh, I know what school is going to be like. We don't know. But so as far as I can tell, most districts they're working on kind of like a manual or a set of guidelines about what the procedures will be like when kids come back to school. And this is an opportunity to be an advocate. If there's something that you feel like is important to you, that the procedure they should follow, or something that if they try to impose that procedure on children you don't want your child to participate in, put that in a letter and share that with your school board members. That, like I said, the blog post is going to have a link to a survey and you'll be able to put in your email address. And if you put in your email address, our team will be available to guide you and coach you on how to be an advocate to your child's school or in the community about how you think schools should keep students safe. So another contingency is that distance learning may continue, maybe not for all students, but there are some students who, for medical reasons, it's really not safe for them to go back. Or maybe there's a family member who can't go back, or I heard that maybe a fifth of teachers, I don't know what it is in San Antonio, but I think nationwide about 1/5 of teachers are old enough to be considered at risk for serious complications from coronavirus. So those it's likely that pretty much every school is going to have to offer some kind of distance learning for some set of the student population. And some charter schools have already said that they definitely are going to offer some kind of distance learning. So Promesa Academy is a new charter school opening up, and they've said yes, that remote learning will be a choice that parents can make. And then also, like on an earlier show, we had Brooks Academies, and how we talked to them about how they offer distance learning, and they've said that in some form will continue in the fall. So, we have a good thoughtful comment from April. She says it is too far in advance. We all need to be flexible. As much as we cannot plan, we hope we can plan to be flexible. I hope we can have a mindset of planning to be flexible and creative. Yeah, that's very well said, April. We really can't say for sure what back to school will be like. We can think about the contingencies, and we can be flexible and open-minded. We can keep educating ourselves about it, just like the school leaders are trying to learn about how to be safe. And just don't rush to judgment. Like if they say we're introducing this new procedure, don't freak out. Hear them out and try to find out, why they think it's important. How is that workable for kids? How would it affect your child, right? So like, I know for my son, it was hard to find masks that he would be comfortable wearing. So for a while, we had him wearing the disposable mask, but he's sensitive to fabrics. It's always been a challenge to find things that are soft enough, right? Some t-shirts he just won't wear, they're too scratchy. So finally I got on Etsy and found some nice quilting fabric with creepers and diamond swords on it. Oh no, they're not diamond swords, sorry. I'm not good at my Minecraft details. Anyway, we got Minecraft quilting fabric, and I handmade some masks for him. Borrowed my mom's sewing machine. It's got the little braided elastic loops around the ears, and he will wear those. So it was a sensory issue, right? Just keep experimenting until you find something that works. And thank goodness for Etsy, right? And Minecraft fabrics. Um, you know, just April's advice is be flexible, be creative. Have a mindset of where you're preparing for those things to come up. So, oh, and we have a comment from Mandy. Love that you are sharing and discussing this. Thank you. Mandy, I've been trying to find the right balance, because I think if I talked about this every day, I think we'd all get depressed, we'd get sick of it. And that's why I'm trying to find the right mix between like, what are things we can do living in the now, enjoying the outdoors, keep learning, keep reaching our goals, right? Like my goal of going to Enchanted Rock, right? It's something I've been meaning to do for like 20 years and I finally did it. So there's time for that. And there's time like this to say, look, how are we as a family, how is me in my head, how are we as a community going to address this, and that affects what kind of people we are and how we come through this. So I'm glad you appreciate it. It's kind of a tough subject, but I wanted to address it for the group and for the online community. Okay, so we talked about distance learning continuing. So there are families, there are children with conditions that make them vulnerable. There are, kids who have family members, maybe a grandparent who lives in the household, who would be put at risk. And then, we've been reading about, like, there's a syndrome that can happen in a very, very small number of children who have a sudden and serious response to coronavirus. And that's one of those really terrifying things where, it's such a small risk. Like, I know it's riskier for me to go out and drive in my car, right? But it's hard to be, mathematical and rational about something like that, right? So, that's where this could be a very personal decision, about as things reopen, how much do you venture out, right? And then, for your family, you weigh the trade-offs, right? If you have kids who are very social and they really miss their friends and they really miss being in a school environment, um, maybe that's the right decision for you. But if you have kids who are pretty tech savvy and they're pretty comfortable being at home, and like I have the option to work from, actually my husband and I both have been working from home just fine. Um, we have that flexibility. For our family, it might make more sense to continue with distance learning for a while longer. Um, I still don't know. I can't make up that mind for that. I can't make up my own mind about it. And I ask for grace as and I'm going to give everyone else grace as they figure out that decision for themselves. Um, and then another contingency that I think the schools are preparing for is, or you may have heard the phrase "the hammer and the dance." There was a writer in San Francisco that kind of coined that phrase, and I've got the link in the draft. The idea is that the hammer was the everybody go home now, stay home, right? That's the hammer. The dance is what we're doing now, which is things start to reopen, and the local epidemiologists look at the data and say, how many of all the testing, right, of the thousands of tests being administered in San Antonio, um, every day, how many are coming back positive, right? So the rate has dropped from maybe 6% positive down to like 3.5% positive. So that's actually a sign that the incidence of coronavirus in San Antonio is declining. So that's good news. They're still finding cases, and people are still suffering. So you know, it's just a matter of looking at the data. So if, let's say that rate of, right, they're administering thousands of tests every day, but if that rate starts to creep up again, um, then that's a sign that maybe we shouldn't be opening the restaurants. Maybe we shouldn't be opening the movie theaters, right? So we might have to step back. Um, if the data start to look worse, then the schools might take a break, right? So we might get a longer Thanksgiving or something, right? Or we might get a longer fall break, you know, because closing schools for a few weeks, it's a way to kind of pump the brakes on the rate of transmission in a community. Um, there's a lot of unknowns here, right? We don't know how much, right? If children don't tend to show symptoms, how contagious are they? We really don't know, right? I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, but yeah. So now another thing that's interesting. So the Texas Education Agency put out a slide deck of guidance for school boards who are looking at revising their school calendars. So yeah, they normally around this time of year, um, I update our school calendars post. It's usually one of our highest traffic blog posts because, right, sometimes you're like, oh, when is that date, right? And then so we just have like a list of, you know, all the school calendars. Well, this year I haven't really bothered to compile it for next year because I really, even though by now, you know, most school boards have approved, you know, a 2020-2021 school calendar, I don't think it's set in stone by any means. So what the TEA is recommending is it's not really, I'd say year-round school. It's kind of a misnomer. It's not really year-round school, but like if you're familiar with Castle Hills Elementary or Lamar Elementary, um, I guess another term for it is intersessional calendar. So the idea is that the summer break is shorter. It's roughly the same number of school days or hours of school, but there are longer breaks. There's like a longer fall break or a longer Thanksgiving break. Right? Or like, so for example, UT Austin has said that students will stay home after Thanksgiving. Interesting, right? They'll go on campus in the fall, but then after Thanksgiving, which everybody's traveling and, you know, kind of making a petri dish, then they would stay home and they would do their finals remotely. Interesting, right? So what if schools in San Antonio, K through 12, adopt an intersessional calendar where there's like a built-in like long Thanksgiving break, um, a long winter break, a long spring break, and then a shorter summer next year. So I think the idea being that each of those long breaks would be sort of a cool off period, right? It would be like pumping the brakes and just keeping kids at home and slowing down the spread. And um, I mean, you know, we're all familiar with, you know, flu season, right? And when, you know, or like when those stomach bugs kind of, you know, run through the campus. And, you know, even before coronavirus, there were times when, you know, schools would have to shut down because there were just so much absenteeism. You know, they couldn't even find enough substitute teachers, right? Because of flu. That's something that we've been living with for years. So I think what TEA is suggesting is schools go ahead and build into your calendar these breaks so that, you know, if a second wave happens or if there's, you know, a rise in cases in your community, you've already built some wiggle room into your calendar. You know, it would push the school year. Now, some schools are looking at starting earlier, but that's more, I'd say, in the Houston area. They're talking about starting earlier. Um, Now, there's a state law that says this is the earliest school start date, but any school, any district that has adopted a district of innovation plan is exempt from that and they can start earlier. And so, for example, San Antonio ISD has been a district of innovation for years and they have an earlier school start date. So, right, SAISD, I can't imagine that they would start any earlier because they already start like in early August. You know, but the districts that have later start dates, they could, you know, I don't know. I don't know exactly what, you know, would they have to file a district innovation plan on short notice? Would they have to get some kind of waiver from the state? I don't know, but that's a possibility. I'm not hearing about it locally yet in San Antonio about any earlier start dates. But I would say definitely keep your ears open about revised school calendars for the coming year. That's something that it's not determined by TEA, right? TEA can present this slideshow, this PowerPoint, and say, here's you know, these are the reasons why you would do this, and here's how you might adjust your calendar, but it's local control. It's up to each individual school district to revise their calendars. And again, advocacy. This is where, you know, we're going to have a survey in the post. You can share your email address. We can coach you. We can give you like a form letter you can work from, and say, hey, if you're going to change the school calendar, this is what I think you should do, right? The school boards, they need to hear from parents about how to do this, right? They shouldn't be making these decisions in a vacuum. And the school board members that I've interacted with, they are they really care. They want to know what people in their community are saying. They want to hear from you. Don't be intimidated. Okay, just send the letter, send the email. It really, like, most people don't take the time to write, or they feel shy about it. And so if you actually do write, your voice carries a lot of weight. So that's why, like, that's part of our role at SA Charter Moms, is to facilitate your advocacy as a parent. And if modifying school calendars is something that matters to you, maybe you've been a fan of year-round school or intersessional calendars all along, and maybe this is a change that will stick. I think a lot of parents have been hoping for something like this for a long time. So maybe its time has come. So related again to, like, the hammer and the dance. So schools can anticipate additional waves of infection by building this wiggle room into their calendars. Whether they'll do that or not, I don't know. We can have an impact on that by advocating for it, but we'll see what happens. Another possibility is that there may be sort of intermittent closures. So, for example, if a particular student gets diagnosed with COVID-19, then they'll do contact tracing, right? Which means that anybody that they interacted with should be quarantined in case they're infected and don't know it yet, right? And most people show symptoms by 5 days, but some people don't show symptoms until 14 days. So I guess what I'm guessing is that if a student was sick, then they might send home everyone in their classroom, but they might not shut down the whole school. I don't know. This kind of goes back to the manual, right? I think a lot of schools are working on a manual or a set of guidelines about how school reopens, and creating these, like, decision trees, right? Of, like, okay, school nurse, or okay, principal, if this situation arises on your campus, this is how you handle it, right? Okay, a student had a fever, they got sent home. They tested positive for coronavirus. Let's notify everyone in their class. Let's ask those families to keep their kids home for a certain period of time, right? I'm speculating about this. I'm not the expert, but at least, see, we're dealing with all this uncertainty. We don't know for sure what's going to happen, but we can try to find, like, pathways or patterns of thought that seem likely. We can start to mentally get used to those ideas, and then maybe it won't be such a shock when things come around in the fall, and or when, I'm guessing that maybe by about a month from now, maybe by late June, schools will be starting to make announcements about what back to school will be like. I don't know, at least some contingencies. I hope they tell us by then. This is kind of a mission shift for SA Charter Moms. So, like, what we're anticipating is that by like late July, early August, families are going to be trying to firm up what their plans are, right? So, like, some families, maybe distance learning or remote education was really stressful. Like, you didn't like messing with the technology, or you didn't like having to log in at certain times, or things like that. Some families may just choose to homeschool, or you may choose, like, a full-time virtual school instead of doing distance learning through the bricks and mortar school that your child was enrolled in. So, there may be some change happening in the fall. I think that we're starting to hear back from parents about, well, my experience at this school with distance learning was like this, right? So we've had discussions about that in the group, and I've had guests here on Charter Moms chats, or guest posts on the blog, right? We've talked to Basis about how rapidly they deployed Microsoft Teams to be able to do distance learning, and how, like, they modified their grading policy, but they still introduced a lot of new material to their students. So I think Basis gets a gold star for being really adaptive to remote education. Brooks has a really interesting approach to it, where on Tuesdays and Thursdays they have synchronous classes. It's like a school day. That's a lot of time on Zoom. For some families, for some kids, they feel really connected that way, and for some families, like, for some kids, they would feel really drained, I think, spending that much time on Zoom. So we publish a lot of school guides and stuff. I feel like we're gonna have to have, like, school guide asterisk like coronavirus version, right? To describe to you, how different schools are handling, um, like what will this back to school manual look like at different schools. So we're going to be working really hard. I mean, I think at first in summer we're all trying to figure out like how are we going to keep our kids busy, and that's our big project for June and July is suggesting ideas about how to keep your kids learning at home. That's why like we had the post kind of on the learn everywhere topic in that partnership. So we'll keep talking about that in the summer, but we're planning kind of a transition in August to talking more about how are different schools handling remote education? How are they handling back to school? What are their procedures for bringing students back on campus? How have they modified their school calendars? And we'll just keep it coming. And so, look, if you keep your kids in the same school and you just want to know, like, what the plans are for reopening the campus, or will that school offer distance learning as an option? We're going to be tracking that. If you want to change schools because you think a different school is offering a more effective remote education model, just like to mention that Basis San Antonio Northeast still has some open seats in the primary school. Just throwing that out there. You know, that's legit. If you want to move from a bricks and mortar school to a virtual school, let's see, the website Fun for Elmo Kids has a good list of virtual schools. We shared that in the group recently. So hi Sylvia, good work there. And then maybe you just want to go full on homeschooling, right? So we've shared how to write a withdrawal letter. The Homeschool Legal Defense Association has a Texas form letter for how to withdraw your kids from school. And once you do that, you are scot-free, man. You are a homeschooler. Been there, done that. It's good stuff, right? I mean, because we're believers in parent power here. So we trust your judgment about to do what's right for your kids. And that's the note I want to close on basically is let's treat each other with kindness and understanding. We are all stressed out and having to live with this uncertainty of not knowing what back to school is like, not knowing what things to do are safe or not safe. Every family is different. Every school is handling this differently. So if somebody says, like, the minute they open those doors, my kids are back inside. Okay, good. That works for you. And if another family says, okay, we have like this list of medical issues in our family, so call me when there's a vaccine, that's totally legit too. Okay. So basically the rule in our group is that I or our moderator Becca will step in if we feel like different members are judging or criticizing other members. So if somebody says, look, I just like, that's great that they want to do that. I don't feel safe. There's no way I would do summer school. You more power to you. And if you're like, I am so done with this. Like, when does the school open? I'm dropping my kids off and running away. You do you, right? I'll do me, you do you. We treat each other with kindness. We're here to problem solve. We want the group to be a safe space where people can share, hey, this is what I'm worried about. How do I solve this? And not get jumped on of like, well, why are you worried about that? Or, and this has become so politically polarizing. Look, I'm here to present information, try to help you find reliable sources, help you be digitally literate and media savvy. But I'm not gonna tell you what's right to do for your kids. That is your decision, okay? Because what we stand for is parent power. So, okay, we have a few more comments here. Oh, Olivia, thank you, Olivia. She says she appreciates the videos. And oh yeah, Becca, Becca's our group moderator, and yeah, she's talking. Yeah, Basis Northeast has open seats, and Basis has done an outstanding job of adapting to remote learning, in my opinion. So maybe you wouldn't have considered Basis in the past, but if you're looking for a high quality remote education option, they've done it very well. We don't know yet what their back to school will look like, but hopefully they'll continue to offer remote education as an option, and they're doing it really well. So Laura, hi Laura. She says, "You do you, and I'll do me." Yes, actually, I think I borrowed that from Chris Stewart, Citizen Stewart. But I'm going to shamelessly borrow it because it's just good advice. So, yes, you do you, flex, right? And then Crystal says, "A little kindness goes a long way. I'm also trying not to stress about it until we know what will happen." Yeah, hi Crystal. Yeah, really, it's hard, and that's where like I'm trying to find the balance of talking about things that are here's an activity you can do with your kids. Here are things the way to have fun and keep learning and still be safe, play outside. And then every now and then, like today, step back and say, okay, this is what's going on out there. This is what we stand for, right? I'll do me, you do you. Fair, reliable information. Um, and we're just trying to make figure it out as we go along. So now I'm taking a break on Memorial Day on Monday. Have a I hope you enjoy spending time with your family on Memorial Day. I hope you're safe. It's a time to reflect on, the service members who sacrificed themselves for our freedom. We may not feel as free as we used to, but we will get through this, and our essential freedoms are intact. We just need to stay healthy and get through this. So now on Tuesday, we have a guest. We have Dr. Joanne Turner from the Texas Biomedical Research Center. And so we get to, today you've been hearing me just kind of speculate about coronavirus, but we're going to have a real expert about infectious diseases on Tuesday. So I'll post a thread in the group where you can tell me what you want to know. What do you want me to ask Dr. Turner? And then we'll talk to her on Tuesday. So thanks for joining me, and I will be back next week.